Hello, everybody. Walter Cotton here. I'm putting together this quick hit video to fulfill a promise delayed or promise deferred, if you will. One of our members reminded me that earlier in the year, I promised to deliver the veteran business legislative priorities for the 116th Congress, and as schedules and timing and just all other kind of events occur, this one slipped my mind. So I'm using this video to deliver the the legislative priorities for the 116th Congress. And I want to make sure that I qualify these priorities because my priorities focus on the area of business. I'm not focused on healthcare. I'm not focused on education. I'm not focused on law in many instances. Those are outside of my domain. My domain of focus is the area of business, building successful businesses, and therefore my legislative priorities will focus on the needs of the veteran business owner. So without further ado, let me jump into this quick presentation that I've put together to help supplement and support my message. I want to start, though, by commending all of the veterans that took advantage, let me open this up so that I can see it, that took advantage of the call to action for the No Veteran Left Behind initiative that was launched a couple of weeks ago. This is simply my contribution to help overcome the scourge, the epidemic of suicide that we have within our nation, within our veteran population. And as a suicide survivor myself, I can tell you firsthand that the importance of being proactive in this area cannot be underestimated. Ergo, I'm going to encourage you to share information on this No Veteran Left Behind program. I'm putting information on it in the description, or should I say a link to a video on it in the description, or you could just view the video that immediately preceded this one because it speaks to it. Share that information with a deserving veteran who today is not at risk, because the life you may be saving with that effort could actually be your own. Without further ado, let me jump into the purpose for being here today, and that is to talk about the legislative priorities for the veteran business owner. And as I said, the 116th Congress is the Congress that will be seated as we proceed towards the 2020 election. So what we are asking for from this Congress is 2020 accountability. And I'm using the 2020 definition from the visual, right? From the vision perspective. We need crystal clear accountability from Congress, and we need Congress to call for accountability from our agencies. That's the ultimate ask that we have of Congress. But if we want to break it down to a more granular level, right, there are some sticky issues that need Congress's immediate attention. Everybody knows the veteran suicide issue is number one, right? That is job one. That's the highest priority that we have. We want to leave no stone unturned, no dollar unspent in that particular area. And as you all see, I'm making my personal contribution, and I'm hopeful that I'm being an example for you to find a way to make your own individual and personal contribution to that area. The next priority area is an area that I'm labeling as the kingdomware area or the kingdomware agenda item, only because it's representative of the systemic challenge that we have with agencies behaving badly. And very simply put, what we have is a group of agencies that are not following the rule of law. They're not following the rule of law as it's laid out by Congress, as it's laid out in the policies and procedures that they are accountable to, that they are responsible to. And our ask to Congress is to put some blood on the dance floor in these areas where these government officials, these government staffers are behaving badly. It's not until we see that type of response to that type of behavior are we going to see any kind of corrective action. And if you need a representation of the kind of challenge we're dealing with, all you got to do is, again, look at our Veterans Administration and the recent hearing that the House Veteran Affairs Committee held on the Mission Act. It happened on April 4th. I'll put links to the hearings in the description of this video. But what we saw was two distinct hearings, right? A hearing that occurred in the morning, which was held by the subcommittee, right, in the House Veteran Affairs Committee that's responsible for technology and modernization. Now, what's interesting about that particular committee is that it was fielded specifically to focus on providing oversight on VA in the area of information technology. And we know how poor their track record is in that area. Ironically, the IG, who still has some 28 open items that the VA hasn't solved from the 32 that they recommended they resolve over 2 years ago, were there, right? The GAO was there that gave VA a scathing report in the information technology area, but the head of the information technology group at VA was not in attendance. And what was even more egregious than him not being in attendance was the fact that he didn't even send a representative in his place. Fast forward to the afternoon, where the full committee, who has less expertise than the technology committee in these areas, which is why the technology committee was put together, had the individual that should have been at the early hearing sitting in front of them. And do you know that there was no mention about the fact that there was a absenteeism at the earlier hearing? More importantly, and they were dealing with some concerns about a piece of technology that's been fielded, right, to help the decision support requirements of the Mission Act, an issue I'll deal with in the next bullet. But as Congress grilled this person, as Congress grilled this individual about the concerns that were delivered in the report, they accepted from an individual who has an organization that has a track record of failure in the area of information technology. They accepted the individual's assertion that we've got it covered, even though the individual told Congress that the reason that they're taking this very aggressive action is because Congress left them in a position where they are faced with a Hobson's choice in 2 months, right? In June, they have no other way of fielding, no other way of taking care of the choice, the veteran choice financial cost. So my point very simply is that we need to ask Congress to hold our agencies accountable for their bad behavior. And when they are caught out there, they need to be chastised. They need to be held accountable. They need to be made an example of. Otherwise, the other agencies that are watching these agencies get away with this malicious behavior are just going to feel emboldened to do the same. Yet I digress. The Mission Act, right? And although the Mission Act, for all intents and purposes, is focused on providing an expanded healthcare benefit to veterans, the business side of the Mission Act needs to be reviewed. And what we're talking about when we talk about the business side of the Mission Act, you know, we've got some no-bid contracts, $6 billion, $4 billion here, that have been delivered to organizations that have delivered a compelling reason why they should be given these no-bid contracts. The challenge with that is that, you know, absent the inclusion of small businesses and veteran-owned small businesses specifically, right, in the subcontracting run-up to, you know, the fulfillment of those contracts, we are again violating the spirit and intent of Public Law 109-461, which was the Veteran First Act, which was designed to empower, to inspire our veteran business owners. My position, very simply, is that we should pump the brakes on this Mission Act until we are assured at an industry level, not a government level. We are assured at an industry level that the systems, procedures, methodologies, and strategies and tactics are consistent with the spirit and letter of these United States laws. That's my position on the Mission Act. I think we should pause it until we've taken a better look at ensuring that we have the appropriate level of veteran inclusion on all contracting dollars that are spent within and under that particular initiative. The panel 809, section 809 panel. Now this one is enormous, folks. And if you're not familiar with this one, again, I'll put a link to that particular organization in the description. But let me get close to you on this one, because this one is just mind-blowing for me. The 809 panel was commissioned by the Defense Authorization Act, and they were asked to look at ways the Department of Defense could streamline its acquisition processes. And one of the recommendations that this panel came up with was that the Department of Defense should eliminate its set-asides. That's right, I said the panel came up with the conclusion that the Department of Defense should eliminate their set-asides. The challenge or potential threat there, well, first let's deal with the challenge. The challenge is that if the creek rocks and the wind blows and DOD adopts that principle, it's only going to be a very short period of time before this becomes a government-wide policy and we have no small business set-asides available anywhere. And if you think that that's like a bridge too far that I'm building, all I need to do is point your attention back to the Rothy decision. And for those of you who are not familiar with the Rothy decision, that is a Supreme Court decision that found DOD's 5% small disadvantaged business preference to be unconstitutional. Once the Department of Defense removed all association to its small disadvantaged business 5% goal from its DFAR, which emasculated the historically Black college and universities' ability to do contracting with the government, the rest of the agencies followed suit. And for those of you who are not aficionados of government contracting, this one probably slipped right over your head, right? Because prior to the Rothy decision, you had the ability to self-certify as a small disadvantaged business. And agencies had the ability to set aside work for small disadvantaged businesses who were not 8A, who were not covered under the 8A program. Fast forward to the Rothy decision and you go take a look. Go to the Federal Business Opportunity website. You don't even see a set-aside option for you to search small disadvantaged business opportunities. Yesterday, there was one there, right? There are just so many areas that DOD is the trendsetter in, and this area of procurement, they are a big player. So my concern, my call to action, the alarm that I'm sounding today is that we have to do everything that's within our power, and that's us, the veteran business community, to ensure that the recommendations of this 809 panel, that they eliminate the small business set-aside, never sees a legislative pen, and it never sees light of the day. It doesn't make it out of that committee. The other agenda item that I personally believe should be a top priority for the veteran business community is this idea that was floated in the 115th Congress, that they develop a government-wide verification program for disabled veterans. Now, I'm not opposed to a verification program for veterans. My only position as it relates to this recommendation is that it flies in the face of the wisdom that the Congress that set the program up utilized to set it up. And the concern here is very simply this. By adding a government-wide verification process for disabled veterans, you add another layer of complexity, you add another layer of cost for the disabled veteran that's looking to enter the business arena. Well, guess what, folks? Congress saw in their infinite wisdom that an individual who claims to be a veteran has validatable proof of that fact. an individual who claims to be a disabled veteran has validatable proof of the fact that they're veterans and disabled veterans, right? And therefore, self-certification was simply the rule of the day. The challenge is that the program experienced fraud, waste, and abuse. And in order to curb that fraud, waste, and abuse, people are suggesting that we need to go ahead and verify veterans. Well, first thing I want to make sure that you are aware of is that in all of the contracting program, the woman-owned contracting program, the small disadvantaged business contracting program, the hub zone contracting program, in all of the contracting program, there is fraud, waste, and abuse. No more so in the disabled veteran program than in these other programs. My position, very simply, is that if you want to curb the fraud, waste, and abuse, right, the onus needs to go on the process, right, not the participants. And what they're doing here is they're trying to put the onus on the participants. Now, I have a recommendation. I have a offer that I'd like to put on the table to those congressional members that are contemplating this government-wide certification, this government-wide verification program. Why don't you give the veteran community something that's commensurate with what you're asking them for? For example, in the Department of Veterans Affairs, when the higher measure, the higher watermark of verification was required, the veteran and disabled veteran community received top priority in contracting for every dollar that's spent within the Veterans Administration. Now, of course, we're not expecting to receive something like that on a government-wide verification, but things that can be done are, for example, we could take the goal for veterans and increase it to, say, 6%, 7%. Use that as just a number, just pulling that one out of the air, right? And we could tier the prioritization of contracting government-wide for veterans and disabled veterans the same way we've done in VA. Service-disabled veterans have top priorities. Veterans have the second priority. The benefit there for the veteran community is that we can take what they don't currently have in their contracting program, which is no business development assistance, right? There's no set aside for veterans. There's no sole source contracting for veterans. There's no business development capability in the veteran contracting program. Actually, there is no veteran contracting program. So what we can do in lieu of taking on this greater burden of verification or certification is give veterans the higher percentage of gold and allow us to include the veteran population in our business development program so that we are one community. That, I think, can counterbalance the cost, the complexities that would be associated with you requiring the veteran community to take responsibility for your inability to police the program. Now, there's another assertion that I'd like to suggest, but it's a little bit aggressive because our community tends to be reactive, but I'm going to put it out there anyway, and that is that the veterans community can become more self-policing than we currently are. We see these veteran vets out there. We need to start blowing the whistle on them. We need to make sure that our program, that the integrity of our contracting program is kept at the highest possible level. Those are the primary priorities as I see them for the 116th Congress. Focus every dollar and leave no stone unturned on making sure that this veteran suicide issue is resolved. It is eliminated. Let's make sure that we are holding these agencies, and this is the second issue, accountable for their poor behavior. I mean, the outcome of what is occurring as a result of the kingdomware denial. I mean, basically, and I get excited about this when I think about it because it's unconscionable that they're allowing this to happen. The highest court in the land, after a 10-year battle, after the constituents followed the rules as they were laid out, right? We protested VA's action on public law 109461. We took the protest to the Court of Federal Claims and ultimately took the decision from the Court of Federal Claims to the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court found in the favor of the disabled veteran business community, and the agency took a underhanded, they took a behind the scenes step of moving the requirement outside of the reach of the existing procurement laws and rules. And this is being allowed to happen. We can't allow that to happen because that action is causing veterans to close their doors. It's causing veterans to go from not at risk to at risk. And that type of carnage is being viewed right by the future generations that are going to serve this great nation. And what do you think they're saying? What do you think they're saying to themselves? My point very simply is that we need to hold our Congress accountable for making sure that these agencies and their staff members are adhering to the rule of law. And if they are not, immediate, swift corporal action needs to be taken. But there I go digressing again. Let me get this one to closure because we've taken a very, very, very painstaking effort to level the playing field in contracting in the federal government, moving it from this equality-based position to an equity-based position for veteran and disabled veterans, those that are walking around with that natural benefit. What I've done is I've created an ecosystem, a community of practice that is going to show these very deserving citizens how to take this legislative advantage that the government has made available for them and use it to insulate themselves, to build wealth for themselves and their families, to help the future leaders, the future disabled veteran leaders of the 21st century emerge. And where I can use a little help from you is I can use your assistance in taking this information and making sure that a deserving veteran, a veteran who potentially could be at risk tomorrow, gets access to this information. So again, we have 4 top priority items from a legislative perspective: veteran suicide, right? The business of the Mission Act, curbing this rogue behavior by our agencies, and ensuring that this government-wide verification effort does not go into practice, does not go into law unchallenged. For those of you who are interested in finding a little bit more out about the No Veteran Left Behind initiative, you can either check out the video that I shared with you a little bit earlier, or you can send me a quick email. And for those of you who are members of the network, I'm just going to take this last minute to throw this out there. There is going to be a training class on April 16th. And at that training, and it's a members only event, so if you're not a member, wink, wink, this is your time to go out and register. Registration is free, membership is free, won't cost you anything. But we're going to talk to you about overcoming the #1 challenge that entrepreneurs say they have to starting a business. And you know what they say it is? Access to capital. So in this particular presentation, in that particular session, what I'm going to show our members is how you can put up to $100,000 worth of cash in your pocket. Let me open this thing up so that you can smell what I'm cooking here. $100 grand in your pocket before you secure your first contract. And while you're putting that $100 grand in your pocket, you're going to be building an enterprise that's going to yield millions of dollars to contribute to that wealth generator that you are putting together. Well, folks, that's just about all I had for this presentation. Wanted to share our legislative agenda with you. If you don't have someone within your veteran service organization that focuses on business issues, share this video with them and ask them to add these items to their legislative agenda. Until next time, this is Walter Cotton saying, I'm out.